Welcome to episode 8 of my core basis curriculum. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you the difference between leverage, margin, and lots. First, let's go over leverage, right? So, for example, let's say you have a broker, right? You can name the broker whatever you want. Just say a random word. Okay, let's just call it Moon FX. The broker, right? You're looking into the broker and it says leverage is 1 to 200. Now, I bet you're probably confused. What does that initially mean? What does that stand for? So what that basically means is every dollar that you put in or deposit into the broker, you get $200 worth of buying power. So let's pull up the calculator just to make this easier for you. So we have the calculator here, right? Let's say you put in $20, okay? So every dollar that you put in equals to $200 in buying power, right? So all we have to do is do $20 times 200. So you have $4,000 worth of buying power, right? So if you have $4,000 worth of buying power, let's say you want to buy a stock that's at $500, okay? That means you can buy 8 whole shares worth of that stock with the amount of buying power that you have. Even though you put in only $20, the broker loans you $4,000 worth of buying power. Okay? Buying power isn't actual money, but that's just what your money is worth. So your $20 is still $20, but the broker just loaned you or lended you $4,000 worth of buying power. Okay? So let's get back to buying the stock. Like we said, the stock is $500. So since we have $4,000 worth of buying power and the stock is $500, that means we can buy 8 whole shares, correct? And 8 whole shares, this is moving on to lots now. With lots, you would have 8.1 worth of lots. 8.0, really. 8.0 shares. That's what you would have. And then let's put in shares here. Shares. You would have 8.0 shares worth of that stock. So, if we go here, Moon FX is lending you 1 to 200 leverage. Okay? That's what they're lending you. Moon FX is lending you 1 to 200 leverage. And like we said, you put in $20. So we're going to say $20. You put in $20, right? And I'm sure you can do the math in your head. $20 times the amount of leverage they give you is the amount of buying power you have. And you can even put in a dollar, okay? So let's say $1 times 200 leverage, you have $200 worth of buying power, right? So with that same stock, right? Let's say the same stock, hypothetically, it's at $500, right? With this $200, you can buy a fractional share. So a fractional share is basically a fraction of an entire share. So an entire share would be $500, correct? So since we have $200, you'll be buying 0.4 of a share, okay? Because with tens, let me pull up the calculator. To make a whole 100, how many tens do we need? We need 10 tens, because if we do 10 times 10, that's 100, correct? So, since the stock is at 500, right? It's at 500, and we have $200 worth of buying power. That means we are buying 0.4 shares. We are buying 0.4 shares. Got it? So this is what the number will be like. It'll be 0.4 shares or 0.4 lots. Okay? That's how much lots you'll be using to buy that stock. Got it? Now let me explain lots, right? Lots is how much of a certain asset you're buying. You've probably already gotten most of it since I've been explaining it while I'm talking, but lots is a certain amount of a certain asset that you're buying. So it can be gold, it can be silver, it can be the Nasdaq, it can be Nvidia, it can be Google, it can be Apple, it can be anything. But it's a certain amount of a certain asset that you're buying. So like we said, we don't know what stock this is, but let's just say we are buying Google, for example. We are buying Google, right? And it's at $500. Okay, Google is at $500, hypothetically, right? And like we said, we put in 200. We want to buy 200 worth of Google. So we want to put in 200. Now, if you do the math on that, what percent of 500 is 200? It's 40%. If you pull it up, we pull it up here, 500 minus 200 equals 300. And 300 is 60% left. So that means you bought 40% of an entire share, which is 0.4 in lots or 0.4 in fractional shares. Correct? Now margin. Margin, let's explain margin. Let me move this out the way so you can see this better. Margin, or I said margin, but margin is basically when a broker lends you buying power. Okay? It is the same thing with leverage, but leverage is how they multiply your buying power. Margin is how much you can use of your buying power. Okay? So let's say you have $5,000 on an account, right? $5,000, okay? Let's say you have $5,000 on an account. So 5,000 is 100% of your leverage, or 100% of your margin. That's all you got. 5,000 is 100% of your margin, okay? So if you use $1,000, right? If you use $1,000, you should be smart enough to answer this, but what percent of 5,000 is $1,000? It's 20%. Because if we do 1,000 times 5, it's 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and 100%. So you are using 20% of your entire margin with $1,000. Got it? Let me put a slash so you can see that better. So with $1,000 out of 5K, you are using 20% of your buying power. Now, the 5,000 we put in, we haven't even used leverage to multiply this 5,000. So let's say the leverage, again, was 1 to 200. Let's say it was 1 to 200 again. So if we pull up the calculator once again, we can calculate this ourselves. 200, or 5,000, times 200, we have $1 million worth of margin. We have $1 million worth of margin. Got it? Or $1 million worth of buying power. So really, this would be $1 million. So if we can adjust this to $1 million, that's 100% of your margin. That's all the margin you have. And what's 20% of $1 million? 20% of $1 million is 200K, correct? So let's put in 200K. And 200K would be 20% of your entire loaned margin. So the broker, Moon FX, like we said, Moon FX is lending you $200 worth of 200 leverage, 1 to 200 leverage, right? So what that basically means is whatever amount of money that you put in is going to get multiplied by the number that they say they will give you. So 200, and you put in 5K, right? Let me put in 5K. So in parentheses, 5,000, right? That's your initial investment. But after we did the multiplication, it came out to be $1 million worth of buying power and or margin, correct? So that million would be 100% of your buying power. Remember, your buying power isn't your actual balance. Your balance is still 5K, but you have $1 million worth of buying power. So if I pulled up an actual account, right, with a broker that gave 1 to 200 leverage, it'll say account balance 5,000 in the bottom left corner. That's what it'll say. It'll say account balance 5K, but the margin will say, or free margin, it'll say like 900K or $1 million. That's my free margin. My balance is 5K, so that's the amount of money I put in, but my free margin is $1 million, like I just explained here. So 5,000 times 200 equals 1 million, which makes up your entire amount, correct? So now let's go back to lots, just to apply this back to lots. Let's say a certain stock was $500,000, right? Let's say it's 500K. The stock equals 500K. Okay? So stock equals 500K. Let's put this under lots. So stock equals 500K, right? And remember, keep in mind that we have $1 million worth of margin, or worth of buying power, correct? So the stock is 500K. Let's just say that. Okay? And we have $1 million. What that means is, since we have $1 million, what's 500K times 2? What's 500K times 2? It's 1,000,000, right? So that means we can buy 2 whole shares worth of this stock, correct? So that means our lots would be, it'll be 2.1, that's what it'll say here, or 2 shares, or 2 shares. Share, if I can type correctly, Jesus Christ. 2 shares, 2.0 lots, or 2 shares of this stock, which is 500K. So I hope that gave you a pretty good rundown on what the difference between leverage, margin, and lots is, giving you some pretty good examples. I hope I didn't mess up your brain with this because I may have been moving a little bit too fast while explaining. But enough of me talking. I hope I gave you a good explanation of leverage, lots, and margin. But let me seriously end this video here in 3, 2, 1. Bye.